Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Crypto Hipster Podcast. This is your host, Chivo, the Crypto Hipster, where I interview founders, entrepreneurs, executives, thought leaders, amazing people all throughout the world of crypto and blockchain. And I promise you, an absolutely amazing guest today. He is managing director at Impera Strategy. His name is Tristan Thoma. Tristan, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome. And it's going to be an awesome show. So I look forward to it. So let's kick things off. And I'll ask you first. I ask everybody the same question. And I get amazing answers. It's what is your background? And is it a logical background for what you're doing now?
I have a mixed background. I started by working in a nonprofit focused on mindfulness and spirituality and teaching kids about mindfulness, and I did that for several years. And I took a hard pivot because I saw the number of people that I could work with and impact. And you can do an event or a class with 100 people, or have a business with 1,000. And I decided to go into a more tech focused route because tech businesses are infinitely scalable and I want to change the world. So I studied organizational psychology and computer science. And since then, I have to say, it has been exactly in line with what I ended up doing. Although I'm getting a little bit more into geopolitics lately, which is an interesting move, even though my focus is always and entirely and exclusively people. I just care about people.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah, you have kids mindfulness to organizations. Like what prompted you to how'd you do it? So basically, how'd you do it?
It's a fair question. In 2015, I was introduced to blockchain and Bitcoin, and I read a book by Andreas Antonopoulos, uh, Understanding Bitcoin. And from that, I was like, it just something clicked in my mind, and I saw this is an egalitarian technology. This is a uniting technology. This is something that brings people together, that brings incentives together. I forget who gave the quote, show me the incentive and I will show you the outcome. And I looked at this and I said, well, the incentive is we all win and we all are truthful and honest and in integrity. And this technology helps that, even to the extent that humans sometimes fall out of their own integrity. And so I saw that and yes, I literally jumped in. I started teaching it. I started consulting for it. Um, I can get into a little bit of my background, but I think we can get to that if fitting.
Yeah. See, people don't realize something about integrity is it always falls out. You just have to put it back in, and it's going to be it's something that can be continuously and constantly restored, but it has to be restored by us. So, awesome.
Yeah.
I do I do want to get into
I
your
wanted
mind.
to
Go ahead.
I wanted to say there's a saying I've had for a while, which is that blockchain is the third party that society never had. Because oftentimes we say, I want to, there's a concept of tithing in, religious studies of giving 10%. Well, we can say, I want to give 10% of everything I earn to charity. And then sometimes it's this check, I don't exactly give the 10% like I intend to, but I don't necessarily have a third party that can help me keep accountable to what I want to keep accountable to. And so what blockchain does is it takes rules and we all agree on it and it perpetuates those rules as a third party that is incorruptible and shared. And so it's almost a technology third party that says, well, you said you want to operate like this, you're going to give 10% and it's going to be in the code and it's going to be enforced and it's going to be transparent. So it's a bit of a longer conversation, but I like that concept that you touched on.
Awesome. Awesome. And we could talk about that more, but I want to find out what Impera Strategy is all about, including your expertise, your vision, your purpose. You have one heck of a Rolodex. So,
Impera strategy is about blockchain implementation strategy. And we started by consulting for some really big firms, did a Salesforce, General Electric, worked with Department of Transportation in a few different countries. always on the design of different products, sometimes business modelings, you know, taking into account regulatory regimes, taking into account technology, incentive structures, right? Who's in your business, who's associated to it. And we build things that help the world. One of the big projects I did in Southeast Asia was combating modern slavery. And what we did is we made a way for passports and work visas to be stored on a blockchain, and then made a way for people to access those. Because there is a really big issue in the world of what we call modern slavery, which is that an immigrant might go to, another country and have their work visa taken away or held in custody of their employer, and then given different wages that their initial work contract says. And they get into a really, really terrible place because they don't have access to the information that has already been agreed on. So projects like that, we did a project in East Africa, working on the ground, helping low-income farmers that really get hurt by the fluctuation of grain price based on time of season. So we did a partnership with the government, using government facilities to store them, a private company with high quality, storage facilities. And we used blockchain to tokenize the grain that would be sold over time so that the farmers participate in both the expensive and the less expensive times of the year for their own grains. And Impera strategy is here as a tool to empower the institutions, and tool to empower governments, tool to empower people to help the align the incentives, right? That's what it is. That's how we go about it. There's some other bigger projects that we did, which I know we'll get into since 2021. Focusing a lot more on finance and cryptocurrency, with the project in El Salvador, working on the national wallet, and yeah.
Awesome. So I want to get a high level view first. I want to dive into these projects. It's been 15 years since Satoshi Nakamoto created the white paper, 2009, right? 16 years. And governments have begun to, integrate Bitcoin and blockchain into their countries, right? What remains some of the greatest challenges with the nationalization of digital currencies?
First and foremost, education. There's a perception in different countries. When you say governments, there are a lot of governments. There's the US government, which sees digital currency or cryptocurrency very differently than they do in Rwanda, right? Or than they do, like right now I'm in Bolivia. The perception and understanding of what it is also varies by what the digital currency is. So like Bitcoin is not associated to any government. It's not associated to any company. It is the existing internet currency. That's very different than, for example, stable coins, which are going through a huge global revolution right now. Every government has stablecoin bills. Active government, let's say, that's innovating with regulation and technology has some development with stablecoin. And then they have their Bitcoin, and then they have different coins. Like if I wanted to make a Tristan coin, that's a personal coin or one associated to a company as opposed to a national currency. So the first challenge governments are having is, what the heck is this? Like, what are we even talking about? I'll give a shout out to GBBC, the Global Blockchain Business Council. They've done amazing work synthesizing and synchronizing the different terminologies and understandings and framings of like blockchain versus digital asset, digital currency, stable coin, current like Bitcoin. So creating that base understanding. And then once the government has an understanding, they're going to make things that the people need to understand, and the banks need to understand, and the fintechs need to understand. And so first and foremost, I would say education is a big challenge.
Got it. So let's talk about El Salvador. You helped develop and implement the Chivo system, right? So what were some of the major challenges you faced there in El Salvador, and what lessons can other nations take from that example?
Yeah, first education. Really, if you look at the numbers in El Salvador, approximately 34% of the country had a bank account in 2021 when it was launched. So 34% of the country was banked or involved in digital finance. When the Chivo wallet launched, within 6 months, the number of people with the Chivo wallet was somewhere around, let's say, mid 70%. So within 6 months, we doubled financial inclusion in the country. What the banking industry and development had done over 70 years or 60 years, we did over 6 months. And it wasn't necessarily because of, it was actually because of a synchronization of political incentive, financial incentive, and technology. As we go into challenges, the challenge is teaching people how to use it. Somebody, for example, if you want to mitigate fraud, you should do a validation of the person to their phone so that they can authorize a transaction in their wallet, right? But then their phone has to look at them. And when we're talking about people that have no concept of digital finance, like teaching them that their phone is looking back at them and it's checking that they are them. It's like, how does this thing do that? So on a very baseline of education and public knowledge, and then there's social fraud, social scams all the time. You can call a random person from we saw this in El Salvador. People would use their phones and call random numbers and say, I'm from Chivo support. Give me your passcode. Give me your login information. I'm here to help you. And if you're not familiar with that world of digital finance, you're used to being, if you're going to be stolen from, the person's going to come to you with a gun and they're going to take your money, right? But being stolen from on your phone from somebody who says they're customer support, that's a whole new world of education and capacity building that needs to be built as we provide the tools. I would say that's one side. The other side is technology. It was the first time in our human history that we integrated a decentralized currency into a national economy. And so there's more than just APIs in that type of process. And the cybersecurity required, the wallet management required, it's new technology, new reconciliation, new regulation for local standards, local banks, local ATMs, local point of sales, so that you can, pay breakfast. I paid my rent in Bitcoin because it was easier than trying to get a bank account. But we had to communicate with the banks, and the banks had to reconcile those and put them into dollars and then send those dollars to the US and send them through all their correspondent accounts. And so there is a technology side and a regulation side that needs to go along with the education.
Got it. What do you think some of the most, in your opinion, some of the most technologically advanced nations in the world are?
Good question. In some ways, El Salvador definitely is, right? They have infrastructure for being able to pay digitally with most things. In some ways, I often think about Estonia. I spent a good amount of the time in Estonia after leaving El Salvador because they have a digital governance or digital government infrastructure. And like 98% of government services are online, except for divorce. And that's amazing. Your taxes are accounted for you. Your bank account is, connected right in, but they do still keep separation of like data security, things like that, compliant with GDPR, which is a good thing, right? I'll give a shout out definitely to UAE with their regulatory regime under VARA. Singapore and Hong Kong both have very, I would say, streamlined regimes or regulatory regimes for allowing innovation, digital innovation for finance. In some ways, there's a thing that not many people know about. I just got to Bolivia, and in Bolivia, you can do a bank-to-bank transfer with a QR in seconds. So like in the US, I think it's funny. I'm American, right? I have Bank of America, or I have a few different bank accounts, and to send money between those takes days and takes money. And here, it's a QR and it's immediate and it's free. I was like, Bolivia is outdoing the US in some ways, but at the same time, they're going through their own economic crisis, which is the actual reason I'm here. So Brazil has a PIX system, which is very, I mean, Brazil I really would also put on the top tier of innovative countries in technology infrastructure.
Got it. I have one that you might not think about. Ukraine.
What is it? Ah, interesting. How so?
I have a book out. It came out and put it out in 2022. But I had interviewed, their head of digital ministry, and during the initial attacks from Russia, how Ukraine was building a state in a smartphone with the identity system and their monetary everything right in the smartphone. So their whole entire economy, well, not whole entire economy, but a good part of their economy was being built using an iPhone. So you know that's where I see maybe the future of nations going. So.
That's amazing. I'll have to study up on that. I really haven't been keeping track on Ukraine.
Yeah. So I don't know where they're at yet. I don't know where they're at today. I wrote it a couple of years ago, but we'll see. So I want to find out, how you bridge the gap between crypto and legacy banking, fiat, in these nations where you work.
All of our favorite topic is accounting. And honestly, when it comes down to a lot of it, that's one of the biggest concerns is accounting for valuation differences, day over day valuation. Um, there is definitely the technology side of cybersecurity and connections, right? Just having the right connections and making sure those connections are secure, making sure that when we talk about digital currency and like actual cryptocurrency that's held and moved and maintained on chain, that moves immediately with your private key. And that's a bearer instrument. I mean, your private key is as close as you can get to a digital bearer instrument because you have it and that is the actual thing. Just like a bearer instrument in physical world would be like a bearer stock, right? If you have a stock in your hand, it's yours and it doesn't matter who else's it ever was. If it's in your hand, it's yours. Just like gold, right? If it's in your hand, it's yours. So private keys in cryptocurrency allow that bearer instrument to basically not have time or space, or not have space in between the physical boundaries. And that's challenging when it comes to, in particular, the way that governments and financial systems work, which is with a significant system of regulation and compliance that is very deliberately put in place to prevent money from moving too quickly. We like instant payments, but only when we like those payments. We don't like instant payments when somebody else somehow accessed my private key and then it's instantly gone. Then we don't like instant payments. And so handling that asynchronicity, I would say that like the two sides of it, maybe asynchronicity is not the word, but there's a challenge there. We want immediacy and we want control and we want sovereignty. So how do we get them all is a mix very often. And what I advocate for is generally not any exclusive system. I'm a big fan of Bitcoin, and I'm a big fan of dollars and I'm a big fan of sovereignty and I'm a big fan of banks because banks do protect people from fraud, right? These messages of somebody called me, somebody tried it yesterday, literally yesterday, somebody tried to scam my bank account and I got a notification and thank God. No, my money is still mine. That is because of the last 100 years of innovation on consumer protection. Going back to the original question, how do we do that? Is we focus on how do we protect people and enable them in this new world of immediacy, where we want also access to on-chain ownership, where a person can have their own private keys and on-chain transfers, so you can actually do it without an exchange or without a VASP or a CASP that has a license in a particular jurisdiction. Because otherwise you lose your self-sovereignty, your financial sovereignty of digital currency, of crypto. You lose that heart of crypto. So the challenge is enabling both in a way that serves people and protects people.
I when was it? I think January. I had some Bitcoin and PayPal, and I got I got an email saying my password on PayPal changed. I didn't change it, and so I went in there and I changed my password again, and apparently somebody had got access to my PayPal account and drained my Bitcoin on my PayPal. Um, and so they replenished the money. PayPal did, but and a lot of it, well, it's, you don't get replenishment, right? So um, the problem here is, you said asynchronicity, right? I think maybe a better word is sustainability. You know, how do you how do you build if you have a bearer instrument that's not sustainable? So when you're working with these governments and you're helping them integrate the blockchain, what do you look for as far as a sustainability solution, and what sustainability solutions have you helped governments build with that perspective?
Yeah. What we're working on here, I'll take as an example. I mean, we improve every day, right? Learn from yesterday. The technical architecture of what we're doing here in Bolivia is innovative. It's beautiful, if I might say so myself. And what it allows is, well, there are innovations with custody management, right? MPC. MPC custody management allows the person, if the person wants to move their funds on chain and own their keys, they can. That is important. And there are safety protocols of enabling that, right? So instead of just one key, you have sharded. So you can give part of it to your bank, you can give part of it to your friend, you can give part of it to your neighbor, and part of it to your lawyer, and then part of it to your regulator, and then part of it maybe to whatever is taking record of people who pass away, so that money is not just lost forever, and you can give it to family members as an example. So we learn from these things over time, and we implement that into what we're building here, so that people have principal access to their funds on chain, and also have access to use products where money does get centralized, right? If I want yield on Circle, let's say, I can put my USDC into Coinbase and get 4% on my USDC. That's great. But how does that happen? That happens because there's interest, because there's lending, because there's a financial system behind it, and there's an institution that facilitates that, even behind Circle with their banks and their securities, right? Their kind of financial infrastructure. So that's how I get interest. I benefit by giving my sovereignty. And I know that. Well, I should know that, but I also have the option at some point I can take that USDC out and put it on chain and get it right back into my bearer instrument. So the way to do it is options. Make both available, make principal on-chain ownership available, make custodial interest-bearing ownership available, and then you have other things like cards and lending and things like that.
Awesome, awesome. So I do want to get into Bolivia in a little bit. I do want to touch back on El Salvador, and I want to bring up Colombia, right? What do people often misunderstand about some of the projects that you've done in El Salvador, in Colombia, and like what are the biggest misunderstandings?
Number one, everybody thinks that El Salvador was trying to move to Bitcoin. Like, no, that's not it. El Salvador added Bitcoin. For the times and occasions and instances that it's better and easier and faster and cheaper to use a different tool, you use that other tool. So what El Salvador did is it became the first country to add that tool to its tool set in its national economy. As an example, there's one of the guys I met imports and exports cars. And I mean, he does most of his business in dollars, understandably. And for his international payments, he goes on and off of Bitcoin because it's faster and cheaper. Great. Perfect example. People often ask me like, oh, how much of the economy is actually using Bitcoin? The answer is, I don't care. The answer is Bitcoin is better in some cases. And a country has access to a better instrument in some cases, and they use it when they want to, and they can, and it's always available. Good. Other than that, use dollars unless you want to use Bitcoin. in Colombia, as an example, um, what we did there was Bank Colombia, the largest bank in Colombia, they do about 70% of the country's digital payments. They wanted to build crypto infrastructure, and so they actually made their own stablecoin representation of the Colombian peso to make a trading pair of Colombian peso, USDC, Matic, ETH, things like that. So you can go directly from one currency to the other. And that's beautiful. Do I care how much volume is going over Bitcoin or ETH in their daily payments? No. And I think that's critical. That's the misunderstanding that people have. Like, I'm going to call out the crypto bros here. I know in some ways I could be seen as a crypto bro, but I'm a human bro, to be first and foremost. And as long as people have access to things that can help them in their situation, win. So that's the misunderstanding, is we're not trying to convert economies. We're not trying to convert, or there's no revolution that I'm part of. I'm not part of a revolution. I'm part of an evolution. We are evolving. When things organically and people organically and the market organically decides to use one thing over the other because they want to and they see benefits, good. That's empowerment. That's where innovators should come from. That's it.
That makes a lot of sense. Although mining Bitcoin in El Salvador on a volcano was pretty novel. You know?
It was. It was.
Yeah. So Bolivia and other possible exciting projects. What other projects? What are you doing in Bolivia? And what other projects that are exciting are you working on as well?
Yeah. Well, there are two of them I could mention. One is that I had alluded to before, this kind of technical architecture that allows financial institutions like banks and securities exchanges to allow access to digital currency for all of their customers, right? That's the fastest way of empowering the most amount of people, period. So this kind of architecture that we're building allows people to have their own custody, allows people to still exchange. We can connect to DEXs. We're literally connecting financial institutions to DEXs. And we're using the same KYC and AML practices that have been established and regulated and solidified all over the world based on those standards. So, like, as an example, I'm right now currently in the office of the Legislative Assembly in Bolivia. We're hosting an event on Monday, bringing in regulators from all over the world and industry experts from all over the world to provide examples, best practices, insights from experience, so that Bolivia can go about the creation of its own regulation. And all of the banks are, financial institutions are going to be here in this, the private event, but we're inviting all the institutions so they can learn. That on the technical side, I'm so excited about that. It's beautiful. I think it's beautiful because it keeps the heart of where crypto and Bitcoin started, which is this kind of peer-to-peer digital currency thing, and it allowing for DEX integration and self-custody, and it allows for the regulated world, FATF norms and KYC and AML and OFAC norms also to be complied with under licensing. That's like the technical side of the project I'm excited about. The other part of it is the regulatory development. Crypto, digital currency, I would say, mostly in the US, in the North, US and Europe, like, we see it as investments, right? Like, how much did you make on Bitcoin? That's not how it's seen here. Anywhere below, the border of dollars, where dollar is a dollar is a dollar. I mean, in Colombia, as an example, you see people at exchange houses going back and forth to dollars and Colombian pesos every day. It's just part of their mind. And so empower their citizens to use digital currency. That comes under a regulatory regime that is synthesized or integrated with the US, with Europe, and other leading jurisdictions. So we're helping to create this regulatory, kind of like a multi-continental regulatory standards upon which Bolivia can enable its institutions to provide these services. And then that could be taken as inspiration for all of the other, developing regulatory spaces that are looking at digital currency don't really have a super clear structure, but want to use best practices. So that's the other part. I'm excited about that.
It sounds exciting. That's pretty cool. So really cool. So I want to take a step. I want to shift gears a little bit and ask you. You know, we met each other from the Digital Economist. You know, I'm an executive fellow there. You're an honorary fellow. Has been your experience so far with the Digital Economist, and what important initiatives can we look or expect to from you or with you in the coming year?
Yeah, I've loved being part of the Digital Economist. I meet so many amazing people like you. Also at events around the world. I mean, they're at all the big events, and I mean, shout out to the Digital Economist. They brought me into a lot of these events, right? In Davos, from those kind of more macro geopolitical events to Paris Blockchain Week and Crypto Focus. It's been really cool collaborating with the team and members in Digital Economist, and we have some thought leadership pieces in the works. You know, that's one of the main things that Digital Economist also provides in content. So I look forward to coming out with those and continuing the collaboration with the team. There have been some really amazing connections, not just thought process, but also, you know, potential business collaborations that have come out of it. So I enjoy it. Yeah.
Awesome.
This
So
is a
I.
prime example.
So do I. I enjoy it too. So I have a couple of last questions. The first one is, where do where do you see the long perspective, the long game of crypto headed in the future?
I see there being an increasingly deep relationship between governments, nation states, and decentralized currency. Coming out to terms with the fact that you can't stop the internet, right? Like we saw China try to ban, Bitcoin a few times, and you can't stop internet. So I think that relationship will get more and more intimate, and including assessment of taxes, including digital identity. I would say as the longer game, this digital identity question is what keeps a lot of us up at night, right? Probably yourself included. A lot of people that see these macro movements happening. Digital identity ownership, self-sovereignty is a big question. So I see this going in a few different directions, and ideally multiple directions all at once. You know, from one perspective, I could see a consolidation of monies and currencies like Bitcoin. Bitcoin maximalists say like, "Oh, Bitcoin is the currency." Well, I think there's benefit in the fact that there are different currencies and different assets and different things, and we can exchange between them and have an open, fluid global economy. Hopefully similar with digital identity, wherein you can have an entirely self-sovereign digital identity that only you access based on your own things, and then give access to the government. As an example, Estonia has a type of structure where they allow temporary access based on authorization from the user. And that's great to take, inspiration from. But the long game is a more intimate integration of decentralized and centralized currency, decentralized and centralized identity. And those are going to come together with, all the other things: land titles, tokenization, bonds, registrations of cars, vehicles, assets, automotive, things like that.
So the evolution is an integration.
Yes. Yeah.
Got it.
And hopefully almost, what's the term? Almost multiple integrations, wherein it wouldn't be one wallet owning my whole thing. I'm scared of that. That keeps me up at night, right? If the US comes out with, here's your digital identity and you can have all your banks connect to that, and we're just going to take all of your information. Well, that has benefits. Totally. Yeah, man, I get it. If you want to use that and take advantage of the benefits. And hopefully there will also be a more self-sovereign type of digital identity that's available to give touch points to those more centralized parts, right? Centralized and decentralized. My background is in organizational psychology. They're in tension with each other. One is not better than the other. One is more efficient. One is more self-sovereign or scalable. That's good. Balance between the two.
I like it. I like it. I like that approach. Awesome. So I want to thank you very much for your time today. I enjoyed speaking with you. It's great. I have one last question. It's how can people find out more information about you? How can they find out more information about Impera strategy? And how can they reach out to you if they're a nation? They want to adopt blockchain and implement it. How do they reach out to you to be able to do that for them?
Yeah, best way is my website, imperastrategy.com. I'm on LinkedIn, Tristan Thoma. I build national digital currency infrastructure. And from there, I'll give you my WhatsApp.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you very much for your time today.
A pleasure. Thank you, Jamil. Appreciate it. Good to see you again.